Welcome back to Let's Play Final Fantasy VI. I'm Brickroad, and if you were wondering last video why I have this stigma against playing RPGs on YouTube, today's video will be a good example as to why, because there's just so much story in these games, and story is wonderful the first time you play a game, but on replays, if you already know the story, if you already know all the dialogue, if you already know all the little beats, it becomes less and less interesting. And that's especially true in a YouTube video, because if I'm just showing you story that you've already seen, but we're going to do what we can to make it as interesting as possible. Note that right now Terra is going to cast a magic spell, and that Locke's going to be like, you know, whatever, it's fine. I'm pretty sure we left these alacrams with 2 or 3 hit points each left. I probably should not have multi-targeted that spell. I should have just let her cast fire to take one of those things out. Anyway, we come up on the Kingdom of Figaro. And the first thing we need to do, anytime we reach a new location like this, is find treasure. And as far as I know, the only treasure in Figaro... There's this box right here. There is a couple boxes right here. Just stockpiling, you know, some odds and ends. Oh, you know what? I think we actually need to do some shopping here. I think we need to buy... Does Edgar come with a Bio Blaster? You know, I'm not going to buy them. I think he actually comes with all 3 of those things. If he doesn't, he'll just have his auto crossbow, and that's fine too. Auto crossbow, I know for sure he comes with. Now we have our Phoenix down. We're done looting the joint. Now we can get on with the plot here. We are about to meet one of my favorite characters in the game, King Edgar of Figaro. And if you watch the channel for a long time, you know that my wife and I have a little... he's a Maltese Yorkshire Terrier mix. If you Google the word Morky, you can find pictures of them. They're little tiny dogs. He's 10 years old now. He weighs 6 pounds. He's tiny, tiny, tiny. When he's out playing in the yard, everybody who walks by says, "Oh, look at the cute puppy." And I'm like, he's not a puppy. He's a mean old man. But we named our puppy Edgar after King Figaro, because I insisted if we were going to have a dog in our life, I insisted he have a Final Fantasy name. And Edgar just seemed to be a good choice. So, we used to live in an apartment complex, and we lived up on the 2nd floor, and Edgar had problems because he was such a little guy. He was so tiny, with these short, stubby little legs. He had real difficulty walking up and down the stairs of our apartment complex. Like, I had to literally train him to walk up and down the stairs, and like, he thought he was going to die if he was walking down the stairs. So what I had to do is actually, I would take a piece of cheese and rip it up and put a piece on the step, and he was so interested in the cheese that he would eventually work up the courage, because he couldn't just step down the stair. He had to, like, hop with his whole body down the step and to get the cheese, and then I would put some on the next step. So I trained him to go down the stairs, and then it was a whole other ordeal to train him to go back up. So this accomplished, I was able to start walking Edgar back and forth in our apartment complex. And if you've never lived in an apartment complex before, if you only lived in like a house on a street in a town, what you don't realize is that your mailbox is not part of your house. It's not just like right there. Our mailbox was all the way in the front of our apartment complex, way out by the entrance. It was like we had to walk the entire distance of the apartment complex. So I used to take Edgar for walks, walking him up, getting our mail, and then bringing him home. Walking this dog, by the way, is absolutely not necessary. There's no real reason to walk this dog. He's tiny. He can wear himself out just running circles around the house, and that's what I do now. Now that I live in a house in like a neighborhood, I don't walk him around my neighborhood. I ain't got anywhere to go. But I'll get a toy or something, you can just run him back and forth across the house, and eventually he gets tired and wants water, and he gets plenty of exercise that way. Or we just let him free in the yard, and he runs up and down our fence barking at everything that moves. That works too. But one day, I'm walking my dog down to the mailbox, and there's this, like, Hell's Angel, like, biker guy. Like, just think of your stereotypical, like, biker murderer guy, like with the scraggly beard, and he's wearing like the dark glasses, like a faded like leather jacket with like denim sleeves or something. And he was standing by my mailbox with 2 motorcycles. I think he rode them both there at the same time. I think this man was such a biker gangster guy that he was able to drive both motorcycles simultaneously, and that's what happened. We can give Edgar that spear that we jacked from Mog earlier. Actually, we can check and see. No, he comes with the auto crossbow, but not, so we're gonna have to buy the other 2 tools. No problem. So I'm walking my dog down to the mailbox, and this guy, he looks at me, and he looks angry, like he looks upset. Like, why am I in his orbit right now? Like, I'm sitting there fumbling with my key to get my mailbox open, and he looks down at my little frou-frou dog, my little just pile of white hair that, like, he's on a leash, but the leash is like 2 inches off the ground, because Edgar's down there sniffing in the grass or whatever he was doing, and this guy looks at my dog. Like, I had a serious thought for a second, like, this guy is going to murder my dog by stepping on him with his gigantic boots. Like, that's what happens next in my life. Why would that not be the next thing that happens? But he looks down at my dog, and he says, in this really kind of angry, gruff voice, he's like, "Is that your dog, man?" And I'm like, "Yes, that's my dog." Like, I'm holding the leash. Like, clearly he's not asking out of curiosity. Clearly he's asking because he just needs to establish in his own head. By the way, this would be impossible on the original version to outrun Locke to these stairs, because you're not supposed to have sprint shoes yet, so me and Locke can just stand here and have an argument. There's a relic in this game called sprint shoes that doubles your walking speed, but this version of the game, instead of needing that relic, it just has a run button, and I've turned on the option to have auto run on, so I just run everywhere. You can still buy sprint shoes, which now quadruple your walking speed, but I tend to not do that in this version, because first of all, quadruple walking speed is ridiculous, like it's way too fast, and second of all, it opens up a relic slot. Each character only has 2 relic slots, and they're very, very precious. And one of the main benefits of this game is you don't have to tie up one of those relic slots with sprint shoes. It's really, really nice. So I'm standing with this Hell's Angels guy, and he asks if that's my dog. I say, yes, it is. He's like, "What's your dog's name?" And I told him, I said, "It's Edgar, sir." Like, I said, "sir," because, I don't know, I was having a minute. And I still had this thought, like, this guy's gonna beat me up. Like, clearly, he rode 2 motorcycles to my apartment complex. He sees me with my little pile of hair dog, my little, like he belongs in a rich woman's purse dog. But no, he just looks, he says, "That's a good name for a dog." Like, he approved of my dog's name. So, my wife wanted to name our dog Penny, because the dog costs like $700. We got him from a breeder. I know we're not supposed to get dogs from breeders, but we did. And she literally rolled all of our pennies that we'd been accumulating over years in order to pay for this dog. So she wanted to name the dog Penny if it was a girl, but it wasn't a girl, it was a boy, so I got to name the dog, and I named him Edgar. And I just keep thinking, like, if Edgar was a girl, and her name was Penny, would that man have murdered me and my little frou-frou dog right there by the mailbox? To this day, I don't know. To this day, I think back to that interaction, and I have no idea what might have been. So I'm glad I told you that story, because that story was more interesting than the story that's happening in the game that we've all seen a million times. Although I do love the idea of a mechanical castle that sinks down into the desert. Like, the foundation of the castle is built on a giant winch that just sinks down into the sand. Oh, we didn't go back and buy our noise blaster and our bio blaster. That's probably okay. We'll still be fine. Auto crossbow is good enough. So right now, it's been storming a lot lately. I'm recording this in the middle of summer. I live in Florida. It's storm central. Right now, Edgar is terrified of all the rain and thunder. So right now, he's hiding back behind my TV in my crazy mess of wires I have back there. So let's talk about our three characters a little bit. When we first played this game, I mean, we weren't really surprised by anything. We had the strategy guide. We knew everything there was to know about the game while we were playing it. But one of the selling points of this game is every character, every individual character has their own special command. Locke can steal. Edgar is a machinist, so he uses tools, which are items in your inventory. And Tara, at the beginning of the game, you think that her special skill is going to be magic. Like, oh, she's like a red mage. She's got black and white magic. Because we're coming off the heels of 5 Final Fantasy games where these kind of skills are tied either to jobs or individual characters. In Final Fantasy 1 and 3 and 5, they were tied to individual jobs, which you could pick. And then in Final Fantasy 4, they were tied to individual characters that joined your party. And so 6 kind of splits the difference, but you don't know that really early on. Right at this point in the game, you're thinking, oh, it's going to be like a Final Fantasy 4 kind of thing. I've got a thief, I've got a red mage, I've got a machinist in the party. It's actually not until a few adventures in that they reveal that, no, actually everybody can use magic. That's one of the things in this game, is everybody's able to use magic by learning it from espers. So Tara doesn't actually get a special command that's hers, that is a magic command, like that's her special talent. What is actually happening is her actual skill isn't unlocked yet. And you can see that because characters have attack, then their special ability, and then an empty slot where magic goes later. Tara, on the other hand, has attack, then an empty slot where her skill goes later, then magic, then items. So that's like your little clue, your little tip-off, that later on, every character in this game will be able to use magic. There's another slightly less subtle clue coming up, I don't know, maybe 2 videos from now. I'm not really sure how many. I don't know how the videos are going to break down in this yet. I'm going to aim for 20 minutes per episode, but who knows? Any number of things could happen. So Edgar and Locke are members of a terrorist group, and they want Tara to join because she literally has weapons of mass destruction. She can set people on fire with her mind, and they're like, oh, that would be a good thing to do to the president. And so that's what the beginning of this game is about, is Edgar and Locke trying to convince Tara that it would be a good idea to set the president on fire. And one of the big things about this game that I didn't kind of recognize at the time, because again, I hadn't been exposed to a lot of Final Fantasy games. This is the 6th game in the series, but it's only the 3rd that I had played, and only the 2nd that has actual like characters and plot and storyline and stuff. So let's go ahead and drop a safety save, because I don't want to accidentally wipe or anything. We're going to put Edgar in the back row because he's got his auto crossbow. He'll be fine back there. And there are treasures in this cave, but we're going to skip them for now for reasons that will become apparent later. So one of the things about this game that I didn't recognize at the time, but that I've come to really like about it in retrospect, is every JRPG, pretty much from Final Fantasy IV onward, has a plot, a story that it tells. And one of the really interesting things about this particular story is it's really important very early on, but you reach a moment, a singular moment in the plot, where nothing that happened before is important anymore, and the stakes get raised to such an absurd high level that, like, all this plot with the returners, like the terrorist group, like all this stuff that we're going to be doing in the first, I don't know, 10 hours of the game maybe, doesn't matter in the long run. And I think that was intentional, because every other Final Fantasy, every other Final Fantasy game, but every other RPG kind of in general, so even like stuff like one of Final Fantasy VI's contemporaries is Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is a game where the plot you learn what's going on pretty early on, and the whole rest of the game is about accomplishing a particular goal. It's about accomplishing the goal of killing Lavos. You set that goal very early. The whole rest of the game is about figuring out how to do that. Final Fantasy IV is about saving the crystals once the... and the villain spends the whole game amassing these crystals, and you're trying to protect them. And then at the very end of the game, you realize that the villain... there's like a little plot twist at the end. But the plot twist is still part of the plot. Turns out the villain wasn't really the villain entirely. There was something else going on there. Final Fantasy VI changes that formula a little bit. And the way it does it, I guess this is a spoiler, but I mean, it's a 418-year-old game. You should have really played it by now. We're going into this house basically to get an elixir, really. That's why we're here. It's not that there's a plot twist in this game. Or not an elixir, a potion, I guess. But we'll just check out the dishes and the tea and the flowers. It's not a plot twist so much as the plot just grinds to a halt. And the heroes have a moment of realization that, like, everything they've been doing, the stakes are higher now. It's much different now. Something terrible has happened. Nothing that's come before really matters anymore. Who's this guy, I wonder? We gotta loot this town. There's stuff here. There's stuff down here. And I think these treasures... What happens in this game is treasures can level up if you don't collect them right away. And you get them later. They level up. They become new kinds of treasure. But these little potions and things, I think taking the little potions is going to be much more useful to us than waiting until later in the game. Like, I'd rather have these potions and things now in my inventory than coming back later in the game when my inventory's clogged full of items and just get, like, a couple more items. This stuff is going to be much more useful to us than the leveled up version of this stuff later on. So that's one interesting thing about this Final Fantasy VI's plot. And the Final Fantasy VII kind of does a similar thing, where we wanted to go... see if I can remember where exactly the secret passage is. Because one thing we can do is just go around here. Actually, is there anything... no. Oh, there's something in those barrels. Cool. Like that Phoenix Down. Phoenix Downs are very precious this early in the game. Like, we're really going to want that. Elixir, and I don't think there's anything in these little pots, but I'll check real quick. No, okay, we're good. Where you spend the whole plot chasing after the bad guy. It's like a mystery story, almost. Like, what's the bad guy up to? Then you find out what the bad guy is up to, and it's like, oh, that's horrible. Now everything's different. But that moment in Final Fantasy VII happens relatively early in the main plot. It's a 3-disc game, 2 discs full of story. This plot happens at the end of disc 1, you know what I mean? So I think what we need to do is go over here. We're going to find the best relic in the game before the guy teaches us what relics are. The Hermes sandals. Best relic in the game, hands down. Easily the best relic in the game. Like, it's not even... okay, that's not true. I've lied to you again. The best relic in the game is... it's called the Miracle Shoes. We're going to skip this box because I'm pretty sure it's empty. I mean, I know it's empty. There's nothing in it. But I think if we come back to this map later in the game, maybe there will be something in it. It was called the Miracle Shoes in the original Ted Woolsey translation. I don't know what it's called in this version. Maybe still Miracle Shoes, or Marvel Shoes, or something. But essentially, they're Hermes sandals that also grant a bunch of other effects. So, that's probably the best relic in the game, but... to get that relic this early is actually very, very useful. We'll be putting those to excellent use as we go forward. Alright, so we've done looting here. Now let's go name our next character. We gotta go to the relic shop and get our explanation. And we gotta do a little bit of shopping. Like, we don't need to buy sprint shoes. So this is the most important moment in the game if you're playing the original version where you don't have a run button, because now you get sprint shoes, and the whole game is better now. Alright, thank you, Mogort. So we're going to buy silver spectacles, which block darkness. We're going to buy a star pendant, which blocks poison. A jeweled ring, which blocks petrification. And I think that's all we want here, really. That's good. We're good to go. So let's go ahead and we're going to give him the relics. We're going to give him this hyper wrist, which increases his attack power. We're going to give him the Hermes sandals, which is a permanent haste effect. What? That's amazing. We're giving that to Locke now because he's going to want it for later. We're gonna be doing a scene where Locke leaves the party and everybody else is kind of doing some combat stuff, but we're gonna have a full party of 4. Later, Locke's gonna be in a situation where he's gonna be either alone or just with one partner in a small party against fairly powerful monsters, and those Hermes sandals are gonna be very, very important. So let's go ahead and name Shadow and then get the hell out of his way. We don't need to worry about Shadow right now. He'd slit his mama's throat for a nickel. And he's got great theme music. So, I had a friend back in the day, back in middle school. This game came out when I was in 7th grade. And I had a good friend who was obsessed with this game. Did you guys know there's a secret passage over here? Haha, you didn't know that, did you? Admit it, you didn't have a clue. We were all obsessed with this game back in the day, but my friend was especially obsessed with Shadow. We can buy... I guess we'll buy this stuff. Let's make sure we can buy our swords and stuff first. We're going to buy a greatsword. Should I buy 2 greatswords? No, I'll just buy the one. Buy a mithril sword for Locke. Let's buy the armor first, and then we'll see if we can get those 2 things. But yeah, he was obsessed with Shadow. A friend of mine had the soundtrack of this game. They released an actual soundtrack, which was on 3 CDs, which was not that common back then. It was not very common to have a video game release its soundtracks. This was back in the SNES days. You had to have a lot of expendable income if you wanted to buy a soundtrack. And it wasn't an imported soundtrack. Like, it didn't come in fresh from Japan, you know. This was a situation where I think Nintendo actually published it. Maybe I'm wrong. But it was a 3-disc set. It was called Kefka's Domain. And my friend was obsessed with it because he loved Shadow a lot. So I used to, after school, this was when I was in 7th or 8th grade, he didn't go to school because his mom was a drug addict, and he basically was just a transient. Like, nobody cared if he went to school, so he didn't. He just stayed home all the time. So after school, I would go to his house, and I would know that he was home and ready to party because I'd be walking through his apartment complex, and I could hear Shadow's theme playing loudly from, like, a block away from where he lived. So, a sad, sad way to end this video is going to be my explanation that apparently he fell in with, like, a strange... I guess it's not that strange, but he converted to a Wiccan religion, and then eventually he committed suicide by going to sleep on the railroad tracks. I'm sorry, but that's absolutely true, and that was the end of him. I'll see you guys in the next video. Shoutouts to Douglas Hopkins, who sponsored this video, and to everybody who makes my channel possible by supporting me on Patreon.